Picture this. You're sitting at your kitchen table on a Tuesday morning, sipping coffee in your pajamas, when suddenly your phone buzzes. You check it, and there it is. A notification that $1,000 just landed in your bank account. Not because you worked overtime, not because you sold something, but simply because you own shares in companies that decided to share their profits with you. Sounds like a dream, right? Well, what if I told you this dream is absolutely achievable, and the math behind it is simpler than you might think? My name is Nick, and I help people understand how to build wealth through smart investing strategies. If you're curious about creating passive income streams that could eventually replace your day job, make sure to hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up if you find it helpful. Now, before you start imagining yourself as some Wall Street wizard counting stacks of cash, let me bring you back down to earth for a moment. Earning $1,000 per month in dividends isn't some get-rich-quick scheme, and it's definitely not something that happens overnight. But here's the thing that might surprise you. It's also not as impossible as most people think. The real question isn't whether it can be done, but rather how much money you actually need to invest to make it happen. Here's where things get interesting and frankly where most people get completely confused. The amount of money you need depends entirely on something called dividend yield, which is basically the percentage of your investment that gets paid back to you annually in the form of dividends. Think of it like this. If you put money in a savings account that pays 2% interest, you know exactly what you're getting. Dividend yields work similarly, except instead of boring bank interest, you're getting paid by actual companies for owning a piece of their business. But here's where it gets tricky, and this is something that trips up even experienced investors. Not all dividend yields are created equal, and chasing the highest yield you can find is like chasing fool's gold. It looks shiny from a distance, but it might just fool you in the end. Let me paint you a picture. Imagine you're shopping for dividend stocks and you come across two options. Company A offers a modest 3% dividend yield, while Company B is flashing a tempting 12% yield. Your first instinct might be to think, well, that's obvious. I'll take the 12% and make 4 times as much money. But hold on there, Speed Racer. That 12% yield might be there for some very uncomfortable reasons. Sometimes a sky-high dividend yield is like a clearance sale at a clothing store. Everything's marked down because something's wrong with the merchandise. In the investing world, an unusually high yield often signals that either the company is struggling and the stock price has plummeted, making the yield appear artificially high, or the company is paying out more than it can actually afford, which means those generous payments might disappear faster than free donuts in an office break room. This is why smart dividend investors typically look for yields that fall somewhere between 0.5% and 5%. Yes, I know that sounds conservative compared to those flashy double-digit yields, but remember, we're trying to build sustainable wealth here, not gamble our money away on companies that might cut their dividends tomorrow. So let's get into the real numbers. If you want to earn $1,000 per month in dividends, you're looking at $12,000 per year in passive income. Now, depending on which dividend yield you're targeting, the amount of money you need to invest varies dramatically. And I mean dramatically. Let's start with the conservative approach. Say you decide to invest in a broad dividend-focused fund that yields around 3% annually. This is the kind of investment that holds stable, established companies, the boring but reliable type that have been paying dividends for decades. Think of companies like your local utility provider or that massive retailer where everyone shops. These aren't the exciting stocks that make headlines, but they're the ones that keep paying you month after month, year after year. With a 3% yield, you'd need approximately $400,000 invested to generate that sweet $12,000 annually, or $1,000 per month. Now, I can practically hear some of you gasping at that number. $400,000? That's more than most people's houses are worth. But before you close this video and go back to scrolling through cat memes, stick with me for a moment. Here's what's fascinating about dividend investing. It's not just about the immediate income, those companies paying you dividends. Many of them also increase their payments over time. It's like getting an annual raise without having to ask your boss or sit through an awkward performance review. Some companies have been increasing their dividends every single year for 20, 30, or even 50 years straight. Imagine if your salary increased automatically every year for your entire career. That's essentially what happens with many quality dividend paying companies. But maybe you're thinking, I want to wait decades to build up $400,000. Fair approach, that could get you to that one enough. What $1,000 per month with, if I told you there's a different purely on dividend income, some interesting. Instead of focusing significantly less money up front, this is where things get really called. The growth investors take what I first approach. They invest in companies that pay smaller dividends but grow much faster over time. The catch? You'll need to be more patient, and you'll need to think differently about how you generate that monthly income. Consider this scenario. Instead of investing in that 3% dividend fund, you put your money into a growth-focused fund that only yields about 0.5% in dividends but grows much faster in value. With this approach, you'd need close to $2.5 million to generate $1,000 monthly in pure dividends. That sounds insane, right? But here's the kicker. Because these investments grow so much faster, you might actually reach your income goals sooner by occasionally selling small portions of your holdings rather than relying solely on dividend payments. I know what you're thinking. That sounds complicated, and I thought we were talking about passive income. You're absolutely right to question this. The beauty of true dividend investing is its simplicity. You buy the stocks, they send you checks, and you sleep well at night knowing companies are working to pay you. There's something deeply satisfying about earning money while you're literally doing nothing else. Then there's the middle ground, which frankly might be the smartest approach for most people. What if you invested in something that tracks the overall stock market? You'd get a mix of dividend income and growth potential, essentially splitting the difference between the conservative dividend approach and the aggressive growth strategy. With this balanced approach, targeting something like a 1.5% dividend yield, you'd need roughly $800,000 to generate your $1,000 monthly dividend income. Still a substantial amount, but notably less than the growth-only approach, and you'd benefit from the overall market's historical tendency to increase in value over time. Now, I haven't even mentioned some of the more get you to that $1,000 specialized approaches that could potentially monthly target with even less money invested, but they come with their own unique sets of risks and considerations that we need to explore carefully. Let me tell you about some of these more specialized approaches, because this is where dividend investing gets spicy. And by spicy, I mean potentially profitable, but also potentially painful if you don't know what you're doing. One popular strategy involves sector-specific investing, which is basically putting all your eggs in one industry basket and hoping that basket doesn't have any holes in it. Energy companies, for example, often offer dividend yields around 4 to 5%, which means you'd only need about $250,000 to hit that $1,000 monthly target. Sounds great, right? Well, ask anyone who invested heavily in oil and gas companies over the past few years how that worked out for them. It's been a roller coaster ride that would make even the most seasoned theme park enthusiast queasy. The thing about sector investing is that you're essentially making a bet on an entire industry. Sometimes you win big, sometimes you learn expensive lessons about diversification. Energy companies might pay generous dividends when oil prices are high and business is booming, but when market conditions shift, those dividends can disappear faster than your motivation to exercise after New Year's. Real estate investment trusts, or REITs as the cool kids call them, offer another interesting avenue. These are essentially companies that own and operate income-producing real estate, and they're legally required to pay out most of their profits as dividends. It's like being a landlord without having to deal with tenant calls about broken toilets at 2 in the morning. Many REITs offer yields in the 4 to 6% range, which could get you to your $1,000 monthly goal with anywhere from $200,000 to $300,000 invested. But here's where REITs get interesting and slightly complicated. They're sensitive to interest rate changes, economic conditions, and the overall health of the real estate market. When the economy is humming along nicely, REITs often perform beautifully. When things get rocky, well, let's just say they can test your patience and your commitment to passive income. Then there's the individual stock approach, which is where things get really interesting and potentially really dangerous, when this is like deciding to become your own fund manager, except you probably don't have a team of analysts and a Bloomberg terminal at your disposal. Some individual dividend paying stocks offer yields of 6, 7, or even 8%, which means you could theoretically reach that $1,000 monthly target with as little as $150,000 to $200,000 invested. Sounds tempting, doesn't it? But here's the reality check. When you're investing in individual stocks, you're essentially putting all your faith in the management teams and business models of a handful of companies. Sometimes this works out spectacularly. Other times you wake up one morning to discover that your high-yielding dividend stock has decided to cut its dividend by 50% because, surprise, the business isn't doing as well as everyone thought. I've seen investors chase high-yielding individual stocks like they're chasing the latest trendy restaurant everyone's talking about, only to end up disappointed when the food doesn't live up to the hype. The appeal is obvious. Who wouldn't want to earn more money with less capital invested? But the risk is equally obvious once you start paying attention to what actually happens to companies that pay unsustainable dividends. This brings us to a crucial concept that most people completely overlook when they start dreaming about dividend income: the sustainability factor. It's not enough to find investments that pay high dividends today. You need investments that can keep paying those dividends tomorrow, next year, and ideally for decades to come. Think about it this way. If you're planning to rely on dividend income, you're essentially entering into a long-term relationship with these companies. And just like any relationship, you want partners who are reliable, stable, and likely to stick around for the long haul. You don't want to wake up one day to find they've run off with someone else, taking your monthly income with them. This is why many successful dividend investors focus on what are called dividend aristocrats, companies that have increased their dividend payments for at least 25 consecutive years. These are the Warren Buffetts of the dividend world, steady, reliable, and probably not going to surprise you with any dramatic personality changes. Companies like Coca-Cola, Procter & Gamble, and Johnson & Johnson have been paying and increasing dividends through recessions, market crashes, and various economic upheavals. But here's something that might surprise you about these ultra-reliable dividend payers. They often don't offer the highest yields. A company like Coca-Cola might only yield around 2.5% to 3%, which means you need roughly $400,000 invested to generate your $1,000 monthly. But the trade-off is that this dividend income is about as reliable as gravity, and it tends to grow over time. Now, let's talk about timing, because this is where dividend investing gets really interesting from a life planning perspective. The amount of money you need to generate $1,000 in monthly dividend income might seem overwhelming right now, but remember, you don't need to come up with this money all at once. In fact, most successful dividend investors build their portfolios gradually over many years, taking advantage of something called dollar cost averaging. Here's how this works in practice. Instead of trying to scrape together $400,000 tomorrow, you might start by investing $500 or $1,000 per month into dividend-paying investments. Over time, not only does your invested capital grow, but those dividends you're earning get reinvested to buy even more shares, which pay even more dividends, which buy even more shares. It's like a financial snowball effect, except instead of rolling downhill, it's rolling toward your retirement. The beautiful thing about this approach is that it takes advantage of time and compound growth. Those early dividend payments might seem tiny, maybe $50 or $100 per month, but they're working around the clock to help you reach that $1,000 monthly target. It's the tortoise and hare story, except in this version, the tortoise wins and gets to retire early. But here's where most people mess up their dividend investing strategy, and it's a mistake that can cost them thousands of dollars over time. They get so excited about receiving dividend payments that they spend them instead of reinvesting them. It's like planting a fruit tree and then eating all the seeds instead of planting them to grow more trees. When you reinvest those dividends, you're essentially telling your money to go make more money while you binge watch Netflix or argue with strangers on the internet. It's the closest thing to actual magic that exists in the financial world, and yet most people treat it like an optional feature instead of the wealth-building superpower it actually is. Let me give you a reality check about what reinvesting dividends actually means for your journey to that $1,000 monthly target. Let's say you start with $50,000 invested in a 3% yielding fund. In the first year, you'll earn about $1,500 in dividends. Not exactly life-changing money, but here's where it gets interesting. If you reinvest those dividends instead of spending them on takeout and impulse purchases, you now own $51,500 worth of investments. The next year, your 3% yield is calculated on the larger amount, generating even more dividends to reinvest. This might sound like watching paint dry in terms of excitement, but the mathematics are absolutely ruthless in your favor. After 10 years of reinvesting dividends, that original $50,000 investment could be worth nearly $70,000, and it's now generating over $2,000 annually in dividends. After 20 years, you're looking at close to $90,000 in total value, producing almost $2,700 per year in dividends. And remember, this is assuming you never add another penny to your original investment. Now imagine if you combine this reinvestment strategy with regular monthly contributions. Suddenly, that seemingly impossible $400,000 target starts looking a lot more achievable. It's like compound interest decided to team up with dividend growth, and they're both working overtime to make you wealthy while you sleep. But here's something nobody talks about when they're fantasizing about dividend income. Taxes. I know, taxes are about as fun to discuss as root canal procedures, but ignoring them is like planning a road trip and forgetting you need gas money. Depending on where you hold your dividend-paying investments, Uncle Sam might want his cut of your monthly $1,000. If you're holding these investments in a regular taxable account, those dividend payments are generally considered taxable income. Some dividends qualify for preferential tax treatment, meaning they're taxed at capital gains rates rather than ordinary income rates, but you still need to factor this into your calculations. $1,000 in gross dividend income might only leave you with $700 or $800 after taxes, which means you actually need to generate more like $1,300 monthly to net your target amount. This is where tax-advantaged accounts like IRAs and 401ks become your best friends. Inside these accounts, dividends can grow and compound without the annual tax drag, which dramatically accelerates your journey to that monthly income target. The trade-off? You generally can't touch the money without penalties until you reach retirement age, which might not align with your dreams of early financial independence. Speaking of early financial independence, let's address the elephant in the room that nobody wants to talk about. Focusing solely on dividend income, especially early in your investing career, might actually slow down your wealth building journey. I can hear the dividend enthusiasts sharpening their pitchforks already, but hear me out on this. Companies that pay high dividends are essentially taking money they could use to grow their business and handing it to you instead. Sometimes this makes perfect sense, especially for mature companies that have limited growth opportunities. But for younger, faster growing companies, those retained earnings could potentially generate much higher returns if reinvested back into the business. It's like choosing between a steady allowance and the potential to earn much more by helping grow the family business. This is why many financial experts suggest focusing on total return rather than just dividend income, especially when you're decades away from needing the money. Instead of requiring $400,000 to generate $12,000 annually in dividends, you might only need $200,000 invested in growth-focused investments. You'd achieve the same $12,000 per year by occasionally selling small portions of your holdings, and you'd likely reach that $200,000 target much faster than the $400,000 dividend-focused target. But I get it. There's something psychologically satisfying about receiving actual dividend payments that you can't get from watching your account balance grow. It feels more real, more tangible, like getting paid for doing absolutely nothing. And honestly, that psychological component shouldn't be completely dismissed. If receiving dividend payments keeps you motivated to stick with your investing plan, that emotional benefit might be worth more than the potential mathematical advantages of pure growth investing. So there you have it, the not so secret formula for generating $1,000 per month in dividends. Whether you need $400,000 for that reliable 3% yield, or you're willing to take on more risk with specialized sectors requiring less capital, the path exists. The real question isn't whether you can build this passive income stream, but whether you're willing to start today instead of waiting for the perfect moment that never comes. Remember, every dividend aristocrat started as someone's first stock purchase, and every successful investor began with their first dollar invested.